Michael, welcome back to the show, man. It's been a couple years, but it's certainly great to catch up.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'm excited to be here. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. So are you at home in New York?
I am. Yeah, I'm in upstate New York. I'm actually like hiding out in my gym, as you can kind of see. We have contractors here working at the house, and they're in the office right now. So, but yeah, man, I'm in the Finger Lakes. So if you know like Syracuse, I'm about 2 hours, hour and a half, kind of southwest of Syracuse.
Okay. Yeah, and we were talking off there, and I think the last time you were on, we talked about setting up a whitetail property. You guys had just bought your own track there.
Yep.
So I, I was trying to remember what it was. I mean, I knew we had talked, but then it all came back to me when you were talking about I remember all the work, and I mean, that was a huge project.
Yeah.
How many acres did you guys buy?
We have just about 40.
40.
And we got another 14 we're actually adding on this year. That's kind of that deal's in process. But yeah, it was historically, big hardwood forests, and then in like the turn of last century, kind of everything got cut down. It became, ag land. I got all the history of the property. I won't bore you with it, but it was pretty neat. It was like one of the first like black farmers in upstate New York got
Uh-huh.
into these Shetland cattle, and so it was like ranch land. And then in the 50s, 60s, they kind of reforested it. So we had so where I am now, it looks like a lot of timber, but it's not really high quality timber because it's all like spruce pines and white pines and hemlocks and things they planted for pulp in the 50s and the 60s. Um, so I came in and working with the Dohertys, Craig and Neil Doherty, who are up in this part of the world, who do a lot of whitetail work. We sort of tried to re-engineer and reimagine the place and do some cutting and some dozer work and put in food plots and try to get it all kind of spun up for for deer killing. And
Yeah.
it's been good. It's been fun. It's been an eye opener for sure.
And have the deer responded to the management stuff, improvements that you guys have put in place?
Yeah, I think so. We will have the place 6 years in I guess in September will be 6 years. And last year, my one of the guys I work with here at Black Rifle Coffee, he had a shot at a monster, and we got a trail camera picture of like the first 5.5-year-old deer, like real mature. And we're right on state land, and like the culture up here in New York, sadly, I will say, is like if it's brown, it's down.
Uh-huh.
Guys just want to kill bucks. And so like a guy will pass a doe and kill a spike and be happy they got a buck. It's
That's so crazy to me, man. And I know that exists because this guy I've hunted with, he owns a ranch in Central Texas. He's from Pennsylvania originally, and
Yeah.
I think after Texas, like Pennsylvania is in the top 3 for number of deer killed annually by state.
Pennsylvania has more deer hunters than anywhere in the country, including Texas.
More than Texas, wow. But well, what he said was, yeah, you come back to camp and it was like, hey, go to work, and you're back at the office cooler on Monday, and he's like, did you get a buck, your buddy? Like, I didn't get a buck. Did you get a buck? It doesn't matter if it's a spike.
Yeah.
It's like it could be a 1.5-year-old deer. It could still have milk on its lips, but if it had a spike, I got a buck. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
That is not. Fortunately, that's not the mentality in Texas anymore.
Yeah. And Pennsylvania, I think, has largely changed as well. Because God, I want to say 10 years ago, it may have even been 20, they put a point restriction in Pennsylvania, and it was super controversial. The guy who proposed it, the biologist, was going to public meetings in bulletproof vests because it was so contentious that they would put antler restrictions. Since then, flash forward, whatever it's been, the 10 or 20 years, and like Pennsylvania, they're killing giants. And like that culture has really changed. And like I see it 45 minutes south of me, where guys are thinking about age class and property management and like all the stuff like whitetail fanatics kind of everywhere are doing. But you go like an hour north, 45 minutes north to like where I live, and you're in New York, and there's no system for what you can shoot. A buck tag's a buck tag. There's lots of doe tags available, and the culture is different. And it's like, if it's brown, it's down. I tell the story, and I'll quit boring you with this. But like when I first moved here, one of my neighbors deer hunts. It's a hunt camp. So I went over there and kind of told him a little bit about what I was going to do. And I tried to be like real diplomatic and sort of like ease into the QDMA stuff. And he was like, yeah, you know, I'm a old timer. Like, I don't believe in shooting the does, and I only wait for the good bucks. I was like, okay, yeah, that's interesting. At least he's waiting for the good bucks, you know?
Right.
And that I
And
was
then he shows you a spike the first day of the season.
it was literally that. Yeah, that is like you called it. Like I'm in my stand and I hear boom, 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 and he's just like dumped the gun. And I texted him and I was like, hey man, how'd it go? And he's like, oh, I got a buck, you know. And I was like, oh, I'll come over and help you get it out. He's like, no, I got it. So the end of the day, I went over there, and he said in the text message it was a 6-point, and what it was a spike with little bumps, like where it was literally like a 1.5-year-old deer.
That's a 6-point though.
It's
Yeah.
got like the bumps where the points would form. And I was like, wow, this is like different. Because up until I moved here and started doing this, like I was traveling mainly to hunt and running around with guys who took it, you know, I don't want to say more seriously, but definitely we're on the management practices end of the spectrum. So then to get dumped into this, it was it was an eye opener, man. So I guess considering all that, the fact that we've got a couple bruisers on camera, we've seen them on neighboring properties, like I'm calling it a success. But we have not. I've killed a few good ones like in my county and in my area, but not yet on this particular piece.
Okay.
But I think it'll come. You know, we're seeing improvements. So
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's the dream. I think. Everybody wants their own 40 acres, right? So you're living that. Let's talk about elk season. And this, I didn't know you were a passionate elk hunter. I just was looking at your Instagram feed popped up, and you had shot a cow. I was like, okay, great, you got a cow, but there was so much history behind that, so much blood, sweat, tears. Like literally, you thought you were going to die at one point. Trip to the hospital. Give us the Cliff Notes version of what, and I'm sure it was a very emotional moment for you when you walked up on that cow. I know when I shot my first bull, it was very surreal, and a sense of validation that goes along with a true backcountry experience and finding success for the first time.
Yeah. So I for almost a decade, I've been trying to kill an elk basically. And first couple of years I went Colorado, DIY, public land, over the counter tags, like all the adjectives. The first couple of years I was driving my Tacoma from New York to Colorado. I always had I had a bad luck streak, and then I just didn't go, and I kept saying, oh, I need to go. It wasn't like I was after it every year for 10 years, but with some gaps between going, it's been about 10. And the first year that I went out there, I got real sick. I was up. I was this spot. I got a lot of history in. Actually, let me rephrase that. That was the second year I got sick. The first year I went out there, I was nearby this spot, and I got a message on my inReach that my grandfather had passed away. And I was very close with him. Like, he was a World War II vet. I went to grad school for writing and did my thesis on his ship and his kind of combat experience.
Wow.
Interviewed him, all his buddies, and a lot of that was happening towards the end of his life. So that project was kind of wrapping up, and then I went on this elk hunt and got that news. So I literally drove across country for 3 days, spent 2 days in Colorado, then drove home and made it by a day. And we put him in the ground and I got his flag and all of that. So that was my first elk season. My second elk season, based on that little time I had in Colorado, I was like, I'm in this spot. I need to go to this one. Went to this new one. It's 9 miles in. It's like straight up. It was very aggressive.
Been there, not to that spot, but the same, the same thing.
The same idea, right?
Yeah.
Like, we were talking about this before we started. Like, there's this thinking, like, you got to go in high, you got to go in deep, you got to get away from hunters. But a lot of as I've learned, particularly this year, a lot of the real elk killing son of a guns like work close to the road. Like, they start on their easy spots, and just get in the habitat where there are elk and then pattern the other hunters and make it happen. You don't need to go 10, 9, 9, 10, 8 miles in to kill them. But yeah, so that year I started getting I got this pain in my side. I glassed bulls. I was on elk, like it was going to happen. I went in 3 or 4 days before the season started. And the night before opening day, I got this pain in my side. And it was bad. Like if you do like downward dog, if you know yoga, or like way like a Muslim would pray on a rug, that position where you're splayed out. If I did that, it went away. And so it was literally like midnight the night before opening day. I'm in a tent all by myself and I'm doing like fucking downward dog, trying to make this like hitch in my side go away. And got up, sunshine came, daylight came, got up, got to the spot, this rock I was going to sit on, and just got really, really sick. Started throwing up, multiple dry heaves, and make a long story short, I finally got down off the mountain. I didn't know what was going on. I bumped into a guy in there who happened to be a doctor, believe it or not. He was fly fishing the lake. And he was like, look, man, your appendix burst. Like, you're on a fucking clock. Like, you get out of here. And hiked out. And
I had that happen, by the way. I had an appendicitis.
You did?
Yes. Yeah. I'm going to interrupt your story for 1 second because you'll find the humor in this. I kind of just was like laying there in the bed. I was like, I don't feel so good. Looked up, like it was a feeling I never had. Looked up appendicitis. I was like, oh crap, I have appendicitis. So I drive myself to the emergency room. Well, I call my wife. She's a nurse. She's like, yeah, that sounds like what it is. Can you get there? I was like, okay. So I get there and I kind of stagger in. I'm like, I need my appendix out now. And they're like, sir, we'll, you've got to fill out this paperwork and we'll diagnose you. I was like, I'm diagnosing myself. Get this thing out of me. Anyway, they're like, an hour later, after a bunch of tests, they're like, sir, your appendix needs to come out. I was like, no kidding. So they take my appendix out. We're supposed to go to Mexico with some friends. We're going to go marlin fishing. And the doctor's like, yeah, you can still go. Just don't go swimming in the ocean. Okay, come home. And like a day later, I'm like, this hurts worse than it did the first time. Well, when they took it out, some of that bile and stuff like stayed in my gut and it got infected. I had to go back to the emergency room and spend like 3 days there. Missed the Mexico trip. And but dude, I don't know when you went, if they gave you Dilaudid. I've never like stuck needles in my arms, never done hardcore drugs, but I could see why people like heroin, because I went from in the worst pain in the world to tell my wife, I was like, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah. So I got a Dilaudid or morphine. I think told me they gave me morphine, but I don't really know. But I started hiking out. So that pain, right?
Oh yeah.
It was, I've literally broken bones that hurt less than this. Mm-hmm. And like I blacked out a couple times on the trail. And like at one point I came to and I was sitting Indian style and I was like, oh, this is bad. And next time I woke up, I was like laid out in the pine needles and I had a inReach and I was like, I got to hit that SOS button. And I looked at it and I opened it to like get the helicopter and there was like no service, and I didn't know this at the time, but like that no service bar on the old DeLorme's was basically like, I was going to send you a message, but like the SOS, it's almost like emergency 911 on a cell phone. Like that would have worked had I hit it. But I thought like there's no service and I thought I can get out of this. I don't want to be the guy who needs the helicopter, like New Yorker goes west. Like I just didn't want to. So I didn't hit the button, but man, I was fucking looking at it. Finally got to the trailhead, 2-hour drive to the hospital. And like you said, they were like, "Oh, sir, I need your license and registration and insurance card." And I was so out of my mind, I just screamed at the top of my lungs. I was like, "I need to see an effing doctor," and like slammed the stuff down. And then all of a sudden there's a security guard and a nurse. And when they took me in, I had to call my wife. They were like, "We're prepping for surgery. This is severe." Uh, like tearful conversation with my wife. Like it was just a disaster. And then
Did you think when you were in the woods that you were going to die?
yeah, there was a point I did. Yeah, there was a
Yeah.
point I did. But part of me, like, so I've talked about this on a couple other podcasts and like thinking about it. Part of me must have known I wasn't, because in hindsight, I think like if I thought for certain this was it, like, why wouldn't I have called the helicopter?
Right.
You know what I mean? But like, so I don't know. I think in the moment, like, I definitely thought like this was it. I remember like there were only 2 points of this whole thing where I got emotional. One was that phone call when I called my wife in the hospital. And the other one was like, as I was hiking out there, I was thinking like how stupid to like go alone, to get sick, to like die for as something as like cosmically kind of trivial as like elk or just wanting to be you know. And then I started thinking about like if I died, I was like, well, I'm okay with it, like I'm good with whatever the thing is, like um I've lived a good life. But then I started thinking about my mom and my wife, and I started thinking about like the pain they would feel. And like I think like I think that could sound arrogant, but like if you think about like a death as like a ripple effect in the lives of the people who remain here,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of pain with that, you know? So I started thinking about like,
Oh my gosh, my wife would be miserable. Yeah. I'm the best. What can I say? I'm
yeah,
the greatest
right.
husband and father. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't even have kids at the time of this, but
Well, I
I
think my
started,
wife might have a different opinion. She's like, "Wait, you're going to Africa again? You asshole! You're leaving me here with 3 kids again." You know, it's like this broken record around here. She might she might throw a party. Who
yeah,
knows?
what the insurance check look like, right? That's
Yeah,
always the
exactly.
question. Yeah. But so I thought part of me, a big part of me thought it was over. I don't know if like viscerally I thought it was or not,
Mm.
because in hindsight, I think maybe I would have hit the button. I don't know, man, but it was bad.
But
But
it
anyway,
wasn't appendicitis.
it was not. So they started ruling it out, and they found ruling that out, and they found a kidney stone.
Mm.
And here I'm going to be graphic for a second, so I apologize to offend your readers, but or your listeners. I always thought the pain with a kidney stone was like in your pecker, frankly, like
Right.
when you're pissing it out, right? Like
Uh-huh.
you pebble, you got to move it. Like the idea of that hurts. And I've done that now. So yes, that does hurt, but it doesn't hurt like half as bad as when the stone is moving from your kidney to your bladder, because your kidneys connect to your bladder. It's a much smaller piping. And I mean, it was literally like I felt like I was getting shanked in the side. So like I had no conception of kidney stones. When no one in my family has it. I didn't know anyone who ever had one. And so it was that like side pain of that stone moving out of the kidneys that got me. And then once they knew that, they were like, "Oh, well, the treatment's like morphine or Dilaudid or whatever it was," and they hit me
Woohoo!
last. Oh yeah, man! Like, totally get how people become heroin addicts.
Yeah. Oh.
Uh,
So then no elk on that trip.
Yep. No elk. No elk. I went back up, like I was telling you beforehand, and I wrote about this. I'm a writer and editor for Black Rifle Coffee. We have this outdoor project, Free Range American.
Uh-huh.
And I just posted kind of the long version of this whole story to the freerangeamerican.us. And I didn't really get into this in the written story, but I got on a bull that year. And I left my good rangefinder when I went to the truck to go to the hospital. It must have been in my pockets because I left my rangefinder in the truck. I happen to have a backup in my tent because when I went down the mountain to the hospital, I just zipped everything in the tent and went, like left it in the mountain, bow, everything. So when I got back, I had this backup rangefinder, and I snuck in a herd. I got on this herd. Um, I'm not a caller, so it was like I was high, they were low, they were looking down into the timber. I had the wind, and I got close. And long story short, I drew on this bull, and I ranged the hole he was in at 50 and shot and went high in the backstrap. Right over his lungs. Left, right was perfect.
Oh, I've been there, and that elk's fine, by the way.
Yeah, that elk is 100% fine. I thought the shot looked like I missed him cleanly. And then when I found the arrow, you could smell elk. So just right through the backstrap. So no elk that year. Went to
And that rangefinder didn't compensate for angles.
Correct.
That's why what the problem was.
Yeah, the cheap rangefinder that I had for backup didn't do angle compensation. So that bull true 50, but the shot should have been 30 because I was high, like on a ridge, not on a ridge, but on a hillside over him.
I was telling you off there that's the biggest struggle for me as a bow hunter is those unknown distances and angle compensation. And I've lost, or either missed, or now I've shot 2 elk that have not recovered, that didn't die, but it doesn't make me feel any better. Oh, I'm glad the elk didn't die, but still, you're going home licking your wounds, and he's licking a superficial wound, but he's knee deep in estrus, cow estrus the next day. He probably doesn't even know or care. He's like, oh, something bit me, or they're such tough animals. Yeah, and that's not to justify making a bad shot. I'm just saying, really, a shot in no man's land, a shot through the backstrap, a shot on a bullet in a shoulder that you get 1 inch of penetration, not killing the damn things.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. They are tough critters, man. Tough critters.
Which makes us average bow hunters, I guess, feel a little better about ourselves.
Well, it's funny, we were talking before the podcast. I never thought about it in those terms, but now I have 2 shots on elk and 1 elk in the freezer. So I've never thought about it in those terms, but I'm gonna make sure I want to up my percentage in the coming years. Let's put it that way. I
have to take pride in the fact that I can get to within, because a lot of people, first of all, not a lot of people go elk hunting. I mean, people that listen to this show do, but talking generally about hunters, most of them care about deer hunting. Then you split that percentage down, maybe 20% actually will go elk hunting, and then split that, and then there's the ones that go bow hunting. Split that. How many of them actually get within range to have an opportunity in elk? I'm really damn good at that, Michael. I am. But as far as killing them, I started out great in my elk hunting career, and I'm riding the struggle bus. So it's an emotional roller coaster, that's for sure. But no elk that trip.
No elk that trip. And then I went out. This is weird. I've only started talking about this last year. But I went out on a trip for a gun hunt with some guys I didn't really know. I knew one of them.
I read about this. This is crazy. Yeah.
But I didn't really know the crew, and we were staying all in the same motel. And they picked me up at the airport. So, I was in it. I was in the hunting party. And long story short, I watched 3 guys kill 6 elk with rifles. They just murked the whole herd. It was, I think, 5 cows and a spike, or 3 cows and 2 spikes. And they were moving in on, they came off this private ground and were coming across the public, and these guys were set up prone and bipods out, and it was perfect. And I was hunting with my buddy, because I wasn't, though we were riding to the spots together and having dinners together and whatnot, I was hunting with my friend, and they were where they were. And we were glassing, because I don't even think we knew there wasn't a bull around there. So we were looking for a deer for him, and we were glassing, and we were like, oh, there's the elk. And then panned across, we're like, oh, there's your friends. And we just watched this massacre happen. It was bad. It was
3 guys shot 6 elk.
Yep. 3 guys shot 6 elk.
This is in Colorado. You only get 1 tag.
Oh yeah. And you can't kill spikes. I
remember I hunted Colorado once, and we had a spike. It was so dumb. You call him, and spikes are really dumb, to be honest. I mean, call him, you could stand up, he'd look at you, he'd run away. Call him, he'd come back. Not smart animals.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, yeah, absolutely. So I watched this, and they came to the truck and were rattled, and I was just, f every profanity I could throw at these guys, I threw at these guys. And one of the older guys like had to get one of the animals off, because they were going to take the three, and I guess they wanted to leave the three. I really disconnected from the insanity of that.
Did they ever say like why they shot all 6?
Yeah, I mean, they said like before the game warden showed up, because like they rightfully got caught for all this. They were like, one of the guys was like, I didn't know which one I was shooting at. The other guy was like, oh, I blacked out. So they tried to play it off like innocently, like dumb hunters. But like, I mean, I was honestly like, I was in my 30s, at this point. And these guys were all in their 60s. It was an older crowd, right? And me. And they all should have fucking known better. Like, they didn't have an excuse. Like, they didn't know their target. They sent too many shots. They didn't watch their impacts. Like, they blew it. Whatever their excuse was, it made no difference to me. So anyway, there was one elk like that fell near to where the truck was, and they had it on a cart, and I helped the guy kind of pull the cart. And then the game wardens, we found out, were watching this whole thing. And so a couple hours went by, and they came to the motel, and everybody was getting tickets. Everyone was going to lose it. And I told them, I was like, I don't even know these guys. And he was like, well, you walked the cart past multiple animals in the field and didn't report it. And I was like, I did not report it. Like, that's like it's weird talking about this, because this is like, I've done a lot of bonehead shit in my life, but in like my hunting career, like my number one regret is I didn't watch all of that and just dime them out immediately and call fish game. Like, in hindsight, I 100% should have. I wish I did. But ultimately, I was not implicated. I didn't get a ticket. I didn't do anything. They were like, what happened? I was like, well, let me tell you what happened, and these guys all lost their hunting license and everything. So I actually, again, I didn't get deep into this in the story, but with that all got settled, those guys went back to where they were from. It was me and this guy, the one guy I knew, who also did not get a ticket. So my team was free and clear. We hiked in a different spot and got on a bull, a 5x5, and ranged him at like, I think it was 420 something yards, 427 yards is what I remember. And he was bedded down, and I had a Remington 700 Rem mag, or 7mm Rem mag, excuse me. And I, just being from New York and not like a rifle shooter, mainly being interested in duck hunting and bow hunting, I didn't take the shot. And he was like, oh, you should stretch it out. You should do it. And I was like, man, I've never shot over 300 yards. I'm not going to like wound this. And the whole trip.
Well, that's crazy compared to where you are today.
Poisoned. Yeah. Totally different animal now.
Yeah. I mean, you do a lot of long range shooting now.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Exactly. Like, this was years ago. It's all kind of come full circle. Yeah. But I said, I'm not going to take that shot. And so we glassed that bull, took pictures of him through the spotting scope and everything. And I was like, I'm done. I'm not even going to.
Here's a question for you. Yeah. Would you take a shot on a bedded animal? Because I sure as hell would. But there's people out there that are like, oh, that's so unethical. Why would you shoot an animal in its bed? Well, isn't the goal to have the animal as still as possible and make the best shot possible? If he's in his bed, I guarantee you, he doesn't know where I am, or he wouldn't still be there, and he ain't moving.
Yeah, I'm with you, and like, I've heard all these weird reasons, like vitals are compressed, or like blah, blah. Like, I don't buy any of it. And that actually I first learned about that when I was looking at the guidelines for running media on hunting television. So like the outdoor Channel guidelines, and they had one very specifically that said no kill shots on animals in the bed. And this led to a discussion with the team I was working with on some media projects then. And like none of us could really get our head around it. But I think what it comes down to is capturing that on film. Like some people have this irrational idea that it's somehow like unethical. It's not, because one, like as a sportsman and a hunter, you've been able to sneak in on an animal, and it is not only it doesn't see you, it's so relaxed, it's hasn't even got to its feet. There's no issue on vitals, especially like.
Let me tell you what's more ethical. Wait till he stands up and has a mouthful of grass. That's when you shoot him.
Yeah,
That somehow makes it more ethical. This is the dumbest thing ever. Like,
exactly.
and I wish that I love Outdoor Channel, but I wish they wouldn't pander to the anti-hunting faction out there. Like, who cares? At some point, we just need to be proud of who we are and what we do. We don't need to be graphic about it, and I'm certainly all for cleaning up the blood. But hey, I still love a grip and grin photo. I'm not one of those people who has to be like, oh, this is me kneeling by the animal and I'm looking at it like it's, it's just whatever. Put it on your tailgate, wipe the blood off, stick the tongue in its mouth, take your picture and smile.
Yeah.
And don't hide it behind that. Be proud of it.
Yeah, it's almost like there was a while, I think it's funny how like that moves, right? So it was like there's a while where I think there were definitely like a lot of like tasteless, like bloody arrows and animals, tongue hanging out photos. Then the reaction to that was holier than thou, like kneeling at the animal or like just the hand touching it,
Right.
all those corny, like pseudo religious, like yeah, it's awful. But I think like you said, like the truth is somewhere in the middle, like
yeah.
You can do grip and grins and you can do imagery tastefully, and not be just one extreme.
Have you been to Africa?
No,
dude. So your pH and your tracker, it's like an hour-long photo shoot after you get an animal down, because they're very conscious about, and it's a grip and grin, right? Your ultimate goal is a nice grip and grin. The tracker carries like a 2-gallon water jug and a chamois like cloth, and they wipe everything off, dude. I mean, it's a production.
Well, they understand what the implications of a negative photo can do in 2020, 21.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got an elk this year. We're getting we've got a roundabout, but so talk about this elk that you shot.
Yeah, so
many X number of seasons later, it finally came to fruition.
Yeah. So I basically I feel like I've had an elk curse, like there's been a couple other trips, like they just don't work out and they tend to end like in big failure. So I was talking to a buddy of mine. He's a photographer at Black Rifle Coffee. We were at TAC at Snowbird, and I was telling him.
Did you know Black Rifle is a new sponsor of the show, by the way?
Oh, awesome!
Well, that's my cup right here. Yeah.
Yeah, that's rad, man. Well, you do good work, so I'm not surprised. And our marketing guys are good at finding the place. So I was talking to my buddy Curtis, and I told him these whole stories. We're sitting around bullshitting at TAC. He's like, "Well, we got to go back." I was like, "Oh, I guess so," And so this elk hunt came together like really last minute. We went to my spot. My buddy Mike Hearn, who he's an active duty guy, Black Rifle, free range American guy, runs around a lot with Kafaru. He's buddies with Aaron. He ended up last minute. He couldn't make it. Then he decided to come. He hiked in. I got on. I glassed a 6x6 and 2 5x5s the night before the season. The morning before the season, excuse me. And then it rained, man. And I mean, like we were in our tent like 18 hours, like zipped in, just pouring rain. And then it cleared out and it was opening morning and we couldn't find hide or hair of those bulls. Hearn hiked in. We spent about a day hiking through our spot, and he told Aaron about kind of where we were coming, and like as another side note, doing a lot of those, but like Aaron and I worked together way back in the day at Outdoor Life, like when he was doing the live hunt thing. So
I respect Aaron a lot because he will not sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
in some of the Western people out there afraid of putting out like their political opinions and don't want to touch wolves and all this other stuff. Now, Aaron is a shoot from the hip kind of guy, and I think that's why him and I get along so well.
Yeah, I mean, he calls it like he sees it.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that's why when Hearn told him where we were going, he was like, "Why the fuck are you going there? That's where you go for mountain goats." You know, so like, no sugarcoating that. And so Hearn was like, you know, Snyder's got a spot nearby here where we can get there in a couple hours drive. Like, what if we try that? So we ended up backing out of the spot where I have all this negative history. And ended up going.
Leave that bad juju there. Yeah. Go somewhere
Leave
else.
it there. I know. And yeah, man. And we got on them. And we spent about 7 days backpacked in, hiking off our backs, 1 night in a truck, 6 nights backcountry, 1 night in a truck. I had 4 or 5 more days to hunt because we were going to do that for the full 2 weeks before muzzleloader season.
Mm-hmm.
We just, all that time, except that first night, I wasn't on elk. And it was the first time I've done this. Like, every year I've been able to pretty much kill a cow, like archery close to cows. Like, even when I was doing it by myself, I was bumping into them on trails. I drew, like I had shots. This trip was different. It was an elk desert. And so when we finally heard them and we set up and we kind of waited and this lone cow walked through, I was ready to fill the freezer and like send it and kind of get the elk curse lifted. And we heard him, we sat, mule deer kind of filtered through, and then saw this cow, and I saw her, and I grabbed the bow. I looked at my buddy Curtis, and he had seen it too, so he had his camera up ready to take photos. And then I ranged it, and I got like 56 yards, and I put the slider on 50. And then Hearn, who was sitting on a tree on my left, then he saw it. He was like, "Put the rangefinder away. I'll range. And so she walked and stopped, like perfectly covered up with trees, you know? So like, if this is her, like she stopped completely in the trees. And so I just waited, and it was like 3, maybe 4 minutes of a waiting game. And then she stepped out, and it was absolutely like a total archery challenge shot. I don't know if you shot those, but she stepped between 2 trees, and like it was vitals, and there were like these 2 trees right there.
Oh, those shots are fun in 3D.
Yeah.
A little nerve-wracking on an animal.
But the whole time this is happening, like Hearn was awesome. He's like 50, 52, 54, and I had that slider at 50. So I just, you know, once I saw that gap in the trees, just set it, and yeah, man, sent it. And like, you know, 10 ringed her, double long, and it was literally 10 or 15 seconds of running, and then we heard the crash of her just going ass over tea kettle through the woods. So it was awesome. I mean, it was pretty satisfying. Like walk up on them and like smell the elk and like see the blood and like pack out the meat, just the whole process, you know. It finally came together. And it was awesome, man. It was a long time coming.
Yeah. Well, and you'll do it again next year, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Now everybody's like,
problem,
all right,
man.
now
That's
you
the
got
problem. It's addicting.
Yeah.
It's like, and you're from New York and I'm from Texas. So places like, well, elk hunting's foreign to us, right? But once you do it once, it's like, now I'm whether the Westerners want me or not, I'm in their fraternity. And although I only get to play in their playground for 1 or 2 weeks a year, it's my favorite thing to do. So yeah, I'm never missing a season as long as I can physically do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I like about it is it really is like a destination hunt for me, like it is for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like I live at 1,800 feet, you know, and like I like to work out. I mean, I'm sitting in my gym. Like I like to run. I do races, you know, but I'm not Cam Hanes. Like I'm a dad, right?
Yeah.
So, but like when I think about like, oh, I have an elk hunt, like that motivates me to spend more time in this room and like try to get faster and try to run more miles. And so like I love the experience of elk and elk hunting, but I really like the organizing principle like mountain hunting kind of applies to my life. It forces me to be disciplined and kind of have like a long-term goal that requires like physicality. It requires me going to tax. It requires me shooting my bow a lot, you know. I can't like just kind of half-ass it and show up like I feel like I do every single whitetail season or like
Right.
every single duck hunt, you know, like
Yeah.
dude, the mountains will run you out if you are not prepared.
Oh yeah, there's
I,
no doubt. But and just like you know, it keeps me motivated to hit the gym. So it's it's a justified pursuit. There's no doubt. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll get into a completely different topic. Sound good?
yeah, man. Thanks.
Michael, thanks for sticking around through the break, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. So for the YouTube portion, we're obviously in different clothes than we were for part one. We had to take a break. I had to go to the dentist, and we were having a good conversation. We still had a lot more to get into, so we are reconvening today. We're going to talk about the new book, Rimfire Revolution, a complete guide to modern 22 rifles. Two things in my own personal life alerted me to this modern day 22 phenomenon. Number one, you sent me a copy of your book. Number two, I went up to Vortex headquarters and to the Vortex Edge up in Wisconsin and shot like a $10,000 precision 22, which I didn't even know was a thing. And then Jimmy over there was like, yeah, dude, this is like it's like the in thing now. It's in vogue. People are spending all this money on 22s. And we shot at the indoor range and we're like plinking like quarter size targets at 100 yards with no problem. I was like, this is a far cry from what I did when I was a kid.
Yeah, they've come a long way in a
Yeah,
short
it's
amount of time.
crazy.
Yeah.
So when did this first like take hold of like people really getting into precision high end 22 rifles?
So like the book is called like Rimfire Revolution, and like I tell everyone, like that's not just cute alliteration. Like an actual like revolution in rimfire happened, and we're on the bleeding edge of it. You know, 4 or 5 years ago, like two things kind of really happened. The first was guys who were doing PRS wanted a comparable platform for training with 22s. And to make a long, complicated story short and simple, a guy named Mike Bush, who ultimately started Voodoo Firearms, figured out how to reliably feed rimfire rounds in a Remington 700 footprint size rifle action. So out of that community, he was converting 40Xs originally, but out of that community on Sniper's Hide came this rifle action. That was at first like super custom. You had to get him to make it for you in, you know, internet forums. About the same time, like the National Rifle League, Travis Ishida and Tyler Ferner. Sorry, Tyler, I'm probably butchering your last name. They decided to come up with what they thought would be like a minor league version of their, you know, PRS style National Rifle League matches. So they said, well, why don't we come up with a 22 game? Their like major innovation, and like it really is an innovation, was that they standardized the course of fire for every club in America, and it only required 100 yards. So rather than going to like a PRS match, like I'm sure you've been to, or an NRL match where it's a destination event, a lot of people are driving many hours. It's a weekend thing. You're shooting. It's almost like you're going to shooting Disneyland. You're going to go shoot a match this weekend. All of a sudden, you had the same style of matches being held at local ranges with just 100 yards. And like, I mean, you're in Texas, so you're probably better off than I am in the Northeast, but like finding a place to shoot really far is difficult. Like I can shoot 200 easy. I can shoot 400 with a little work. To get to 1,000 or further, like I got to drive really far and like get landowner permission. Like it's a huge pain in the ass, frankly. 100 yards, like I can shoot that in my yard here. I live in the boonies. So all of a sudden, what the innovation, if you will, of NRL 22 is they said anybody with 100 yards can hold these matches. We're going to standardize the course of fire. So if you're shooting in Arizona or Texas or New York, you're shooting the same off the same barricades at the same distance at the same target size. And we're going to take all those scores and we're going to put them together on the internet. And we're going to see how everybody competes. It's almost like NASCAR in a way, you know, like where you have all of these races happening all over and the points are adding up towards a season championship. And like Mike Bush at Voodoo, when he got started, like he didn't see it as being a business. He thought it was like super fucking cool and like something he would do as like a hobby. He's a very accomplished engineer in the firearm space. He was a director of engineering at a mega firearms company when he kind of figured this out. So he was sort of taken off guard by the success of these rifles and the public appetite for these rifles. NRL 22 was taken off guard because they had no idea so many shooters would clamor to this. And then the industry kind of caught on. So now you have like at really legit precision rimfire rifles at every price point. And you can get a $300 Savage that I have one here. It's a barn burner, or you can get a $3,000 Voodoo. I have one of those too. It's a smoke show. Or you could get a Bagara barreled action on a Remington 700 foot point for $600. Or if you're a squirrel hunter, like the Tikas and the CZs around the $500 price point. So like 5-6 years ago, nobody was talking about this. It was like gun nerds on a forum and like some shooting guys. And now like it actually is like a revolution. Like the rimfire thing has just come to flood the shooting industry. And we're all better for it, frankly, because there's so many rad rimfire rifle options available today that just didn't exist even 3 or 4 years ago.
What has or how has ammunition changed to accommodate this demand? Has it gotten better, or are these guys shooting that same, you know, bulk ammo buy that we got when we were here's your brick of 22 ammo that you paid, you know, $15 for, which it isn't a thing anymore, but it was, you know, it was at one time.
Yeah, not really, you know, like and I can't really speak to how much better the ammo itself has gotten, but like within that rimfire community, the recognition of good ammo has like definitely taken hold. So like you really got to think of rimfire ammo as like the Europeans and the Americans. European ammo is made in like it's just short of like a laboratory setting for the very best ammo that's coming out of particularly Ely and Lapua. And the reason for that is because they want to win Olympic medals, you know, so those are ammunition factories and processes that are geared towards like peak precision. American ammunition is almost like still in a place like where like grandpa's squirrel rifle was, where it was all about bulk. That said, there's still like a lot of very good options. So like I shoot a ton of CCI. Like CCI standard in most of my guns is like that's one of the first rounds I put through my guns. I also shoot a lot of Lapua as well in my match rifles, but they're definitely like really solid American options. And when you're talking about like an NRL 22 match and being like super accurate at 50 or 100 yards, like CCI standard is my go-to. Like that said, because I run a few Voodoos, the Voodoo chamber and process was designed around the Lapua bullet and the Lapua case. So I shoot a lot of that. But as I kind of went off on a tangent, where I was going with that was the shooters who do this, who do this NRL 22 are completely aware of the importance of quality ammo for accuracy. So like Lapua, for example, just opened a year, 2 years ago now, opened another test tunnel in Ohio. They have a test tunnel in Arizona. Kilos Shooting, which is owned by Ely in Texas, they have a test tunnel. A few years ago, you could call them and show up and test a rifle. Now you need to book out, in some case, months ahead of time, because where in 5 years ago, it was like rimfire bench rest shooters who cared about this stuff. Now there's this whole mass of tactical precision shooters who want to get match ammunition, European ammunition, literally matched or lined up with their particular rifle.
Well, you know, before BLM, COVID, all the social unrest we've seen in our country, it seemed like there was a time, and then and I'm going to tell you this, I don't own a 22, which, you know, shame on me. But yeah, I don't have one. I have a 17 HMR, which is my rimfire rifle, but
good round, but you got to get in on the 22 thing.
I know. But there was a time when you could, and part of the reasons why, you know, I never ended up getting one later on in life was you couldn't find ammo for a few years there. This was before the ammo shortage that we've seen in the last 2 years. Yeah. Has that market corrected itself? And is it easy to find 22 ammo now?
No, that's a good question, and I don't have a great answer for that. I'm like definitely ammo hoarder, like shamelessly, for all of the.
If I go into the store and there's ammo for a gun that I own, a caliber I own, I buy it. Like I don't even like.
Yeah, 100%. Me too.
Yeah. I don't need it, but I'm buying it.
That said, actually, though, you know, so like I haven't had to buy ammo in a long time, because when I was writing the book and like I was obsessed with this for years before the book came out. So I've been hoarding rimfire for a while. That said, though, Center X in particular, like there's just in the last, I think it was this summer, a whole new big order came in from Germany. So like, not to plug sites, but like I know Target Sports USA, which is a popular wholesaler of ammo, like they had Center X. A lot of the precision rimfire forums that I'm in, or groups rather, on Facebook, guys are posting like Brownells and Midway had Lapua. So yes, I think it is coming back. But I think rimfire, like in the last ammo shortage, if you can think about like what happened in the Obama years, rimfire is always the last to return to normalcy, because it's the least expensive. And
it's a good point.
I interviewed 22 Plinkster, awesome dude, and he's in the back of the book. There's like a series of interviews with thought leaders. So like Ginny Thrasher, who won an Olympic gold medal, is in there. Mike Bush, Dave Emery, who designed your 17 HMR round. Like I did a big interview with him, but Dave said something. Dave Nash, 22 Plinkster, said something really smart. Like when you look at all the civil unrest and you look at COVID, like a lot of people got afraid, and a lot of people bought firearms who otherwise wouldn't. You know,
they weren't buying 22s.
They weren't buying 22s. That's right. What they were buying was small frame polymer 9mm, right? And maybe rifles, but you saw handguns in defensive calibers skyrocket. So like Plinkster pointed out, the majority of those people, I would argue, took their new 9mm and went to the range and shot it and thought, holy shit, this is awesome. Because shooting guns is awesome, right? Like handgun, rifle, like I love them all. I'm a projectile enthusiast. So those people went and they shot that, and then they went to buy another box of ammo, and it was $40 for 49mm rounds, like if they could find it. But they were hooked. So that guy said, well, how do I get to shoot more? And the guy in the counter is like, well, get a 22. Get a 10-22, get a Taurus, you know, they have a rad 22 LR pistol. So all of a sudden that guy who bought the 9mm that he can't afford to shoot or can't find ammo for, or just wants to train on something lighter, buys a 22, and then all of a sudden he's hunting out ammo like you and I are. So I think the buying habit of consumers, like they're going to buy, those new shooters are going to pick up the rimfire rifle later in their purchasing history. And when they do, they're going to be looking for ammo later down the line. So 22 in guns and ammo will be the last sort of thing to bounce back. Which I think makes a lot of sense. I think that's a great way to look at it.
I was talking with Linda Powell from Mossberg, and she told me like their analysis of the situation was people were going, first time gun buyers, we were going to the store.
Yeah.
And they were saying, okay, what gun do you have that I can get ammo with today? I mean, that's like, that's the mentality of people, was like, they were so concerned with the direction of the country that they're like, I don't give a crap what it is. If you have ammo and you have the gun that it goes with, that's what I'm walking out of here with. Yeah. And I think that's kind of bounced back a little bit, but it was just like insanity.
Yeah, I thought like during all of the chaos, I was really impressed with Federal and those videos they came out with their CEO, because he basically was like, look, the government's not buying stuff, the military isn't stealing ammo, like relax. And he basically laid out, like, I think at the time there were like 7 million new gun owners.
Yeah.
It was like, what's the first thing you do when you buy a gun? You buy 2, 3, 4 boxes of ammo for it. So all of a sudden you have, 21 million new boxes of ammo being sucked off the market conservatively. So yeah, it's not I don't think it's fully recovered, but it,
No, it's trending in the right direction. And then we have this idiot Biden say, oh, Putin, you poisoned this guy, and now Americans can't buy your ammo. Like,
yeah.
Oh, what an idiot. But anyway, what percentage of the market, like, does Wolf or any of the Russian brands constitute a significant portion of rimfire ammunition?
That's a good question. I don't think so. Like Wolf 22 is currently manufactured by Ely. Wolf is, I don't believe they're a Russian company. I think what they do is they just buy up factory space around the world. So like Ely has extra capacity and they buy their cheap ammo and they wrap it. And I think for 9s and 5.56 and whatnot, they're doing that with the Russian companies. I don't expect the Russian ban, which is like admittedly like just dumb, like how many years after the fact, and like whatever, we won't get into the politics.
Well, no, I mean, we can't. It has nothing to do with anything. Like Putin poisoning a guy has no logistical effect on whether the American people can buy ammunition. Here's Biden's been handcuffed by good people like Joe Manchin, who refuse to vote party lines. And this is his, well, we got to do something, so we'll just make it harder for Americans to buy ammo. It's
a backdoor way to make it more expensive and more difficult for Americans to buy.
100%.
Yeah, that's 100% what it is. Now, that said, I think if there is shorter total supply of all ammunition, we're going to see prices go up on all ammunition, whether there's enough 22 or not. But for all the reasons that we just talked about, like, that's going to be the last to come around. And once people start panic buying because they're not seeing the 9mm, the 5.56 on the shelf, like if they do see that bucket of bullets for 22s and they have one, they're going to buy it. So, so I don't think it's going to like directly affect supply of bullets in country, but it will absolutely prolong the ammo shortage and increase prices. Be my guess.
Yeah. One of my favorite chapters in the book was when you kind of went through the history of the rimfire.
Awesome.
And the rimfire wasn't always a plinking platform. I mean, there were some big calibers, and I don't know if you know any of the, or remember any of the ones specifically off the top of your head, but like in the 50s and 60s, the big calibers were rimfires.
Yeah. I mean, like the gun that won the West was a round called the 44 Henry Flat, which looks like a giant 22, right? 44 caliber. And all, so I'm glad you were into that chapter as well, because like researching the book, like the history was the most new to me, like writing it, because I was so focused on like tweaking guns and tuning guns and the competition shooting. And I was surprised with it too, but I loved it. So that's awesome to hear. But basically, like the early history of firearms was cartridge development, and then designers trying to wrap a firearm around the way ammunition worked. That's the best way to think about it. And when they first came up with metallic cartridged, all in like self-contained metallic ammunition, so powder, primer, and bullet in one case that you can put in a pouch and load in a gun, not muzzle load or anything. The way they figured out how to ignite primer was through punching through the rim of a case, the soft side of brass. So all those early firearms, really up until, center fire development started at kind of the turn of the century, but didn't really take hold until like well into it. Really from like, for a consumer point of view, from like the 1930s prior, like it was all rimfire. The predominant rounds were rimfire. 1920s about, but yeah, it's neat. It's really fascinating, and like a lot of people have asked me. So, the book covers all rimfire calibers. So like there's a lot on 17 HMR, 17 Mach 2, 22 Magnum, but the history story, the history story that I tell is the development of the 22 short that Smith and Wesson came up with. And the reason
I got to ask one question. So World War I was fought with rimfire rifles predominantly then. That was like 1914.
Yeah, that I think I got that screwed up. I don't think so, because the 30-06 was 06.
Okay.
So I'm what I'm referring to is more like mass consumer use,
okay.
Right? Yeah, center fire development, and like a little of this is some of this is a little fuzzy because I just kind of skipped through it, and you probably have a much smarter guy on center fire than me on here. But a lot of that happened at like the turn of the century.
Yeah.
But it didn't really escalate until the advent of like full smokeless powders, which came about, which like really kind of took hold like in the late like 1890s, turn of the century, but it wasn't until like the 1930s with like the cleaner primers and cleaner powder.
Well, I'm sure too, because everyone owned a center fire rifle, like the average Joe. So that has to correct itself too, just because now here's this new technology. Not everyone's just going to run out and buy one. They like what they have.
Exactly. Yeah. Everyone owned a rimfire. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, everyone owned a rimfire. Yeah.
Yeah. So but it was definitely like the platform, if you will, for like modern firearms through the 1800s and much of the early 1900s. Center fire pressures can go so much higher, as we all know, and rounds so much flatter, that once those took hold, that clearly took off, and it's why there are really no more big bore rimfire rounds. But like that was all happening in like the first 30 years of the 1900s.
Okay, right on.
But
well, yeah. So I really enjoyed that historical component of looking back at the evolution of firearm manufacturing.
Yeah, and I like the story of like the 22 short, because that was kind of a real American round. And if you don't know anything about guns, like if you don't know the difference between primer and powder and bullet and case, like I think you could read that story about the 22 short and like very quickly understand how all firearms work, how ammunition is made, and how guns work. So I was really kind of taken with that history and the way they figured that out.
So I told you I have a 17 HMR,
Yep.
and I love it. So I didn't grow up shooting. I mean, I had a BB gun, but I was so involved in sports that like I never owned a 22. I shot my buddies occasionally. And then when I got into this industry like 15 years ago, it was like the first gun that I ever owned. Well, it's not true. I bought a Remington 870. I had to wait a bunch of tables, bartend a little bit here and there to be able to afford that so I could go duck hunting with my buddies.
That was my first gun too. And same story. I got an 870 to go duck hunting.
Yeah, still have it. I'll give it to my son someday. But then I think the first rifle I ever owned was a 308. And I was like, I was just getting into this, and I kind of fell into hosting an outdoor talk show in East Texas. At the time, I was into duck hunting and dove hunting. I grew up fishing and camping. My dad is still just eating up with bass fishing to this day. That's his favorite thing to do. He does it every weekend. So it wasn't like I was not into the outdoors, but he just didn't hunt. His dad didn't hunt. And, that's one of the things that's passed down generation to generation. So I got into it 20 years old, and I never had that 22. So I got my kid a 17 HMR from Mossberg. They sent it over to him, and I've shot it more than him because I just enjoy it so much. But those small calibers are so great for introducing kids into shooting sport.
Yeah. That's cool to hear that. Like, we have very similar stories. Like, I grew up fishing and doing outdoor stuff, but no guns, no hunting. And I was, I guess I was like 24, I think I was. And I wrote a story. I was a newspaper reporter at the time about duck hunting, and got my hunter safety and went through it and started shooting ducks, and like changed the whole direction of my life.
Yeah.
And so yes, the shooting thing, like, I don't have a family history or a cultural history of like marksmanship, right? Like we were talking about yesterday, or in the first half of this, like I had a bull elk bedded at 427 yards with a seven mag. Thank you. 7mm rem mag. I got rid of that gun. I hated that fucking gun. So I have like a blackout whenever I think of it. Yeah, that was a shitty rifle. But anyway, I didn't take that shot because it was like, that's too long.
Was it the rifle or the caliber? Because I like a 7 mag.
It was a used rifle I bought, and it was probably the Indian and not the bow. The very first, as another guy set it up for me, and the first time I pulled the trigger, I scoped myself so bad I thought I broke my nose. And
that 308 did that to me once. I was like, I've never had a migraine, but I think this is what it probably feels like.
Yeah. I talk about this all the time, but I believe like firearms, bows, like there's magic to them, and it either like fits you and everything works and like it's to go, or there's bad magic and you got to get rid of it. So like I have
that 308 now belongs to my brother, by the way.
Yeah, so there you go, bad magic, man. Send it down the road. Get rid of it. Yeah. I have a 308, like it's a Kimber, actually. It's an inexpensive rifle, light. It's got a cheap Vortex on it, actually. And dude, I point that rifle at deer and they die. And like I have much nicer rifles, much more expensive. I have cool calibers, but like that little budget 308 like just kills stuff, and it's got like good magic. The 7 mag did not. But so like I had no shooting history where like I wouldn't take that shot. And I was prone, bipod, animal on the bed, like no wind, like totally ethical, longer but ethical shot. Nowadays, from coming up into the 22 stuff, like I'm setting up rifles to shoot 1,000 yards. I'm shooting 22s at 500 yards. Like I'm kind of deep into that, and that all the center fire skill set, all for me, all
What's the problem? Are you there?
Yeah, I am. Are we still recording?
Yeah.
That's weird. Zoom just said I got kicked out.
You're still here for me.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
Let's we'll just keep it rolling then. Yeah, so hold on, this is all goofed up. Sorry about this, guys. Technical difficulties.
So, dude, tell me about it. No worries. It's It's contagious.
But yeah, the rimfire stuff, like I've become a better total rifle shot and hunter because of the time I've spent just goofing around with these rimfires. My 5-year-old calls them the fun guns. I'm like, shoot a lot. And he's like, Dad, I want to shoot the fun gun because there's not a lot of sound, not a lot of recoil. And then like talking about like new gun owners and the civil unrest and all this stuff. I live in a very like progressive college town, and I had friends who were like, hey, times are scary. We want to learn about guns. So I brought over a bunch of like grown ass men who just didn't grow up in gun culture, but were interested. And I had them shooting a bunch of stuff. And I started them on 22s and they loved it. And it was funny, like the bigger rifles with muzzle brakes and whatnot, like they were all like a little like, you know, they're just not gun guys or any close to gun guys. And like,
they will be, hopefully.
Yeah,
you gotta start somewhere.
not these guys. But like even like a 223 like with a muzzle brake, and part of that was my fault. Like I had them, I can shoot in my office outside, slide the door, and like the concussion from the muzzle brake in the office, like in the door, like they were like, no way, you know. Didn't want to shoot that anymore. Whereas with the 22, like they were ringing like quarters at 50 yards and loving it. So yeah, it's got a lot of great training applications. You can small game hunt with them. I mean, I've kind of become an evangelist for rimfires, but I think it's warranted because you can just do so much with them. You know, whatever your age, even old, young, there's a lot there.
So, what is the advantage of a 22 over a 17 HMR?
So with the 22, you can compete in NRL 22 or PRS rimfire. The 22 makes a better training rifle if you want to get better with center fire, because there's a rough scaling between bullet drop and wind deflection of a 22 and a 308. These guys, Fin Accuracy, you should Google them. It's in the book, but their website's fantastic. Kind of roughly figured out that there's like a 4x factor. So like if you're shooting a 22 match velocity 22 at 200 yards, that's like roughly equivalent of shooting a 308 at 800 yards. So the amount of twists in the optic, the bullet drop, the way the wind moves it, like they correlate very closely, not perfectly, and it depends on rifles, and there's a lot you got to kind of unfuck about all of it, but it's very comparable. So as like a training tool, 22 is really kind of risen above all of the others. It's also like generally like less expensive. Like I name dropped CCI earlier.
Well, I shoot that Hornady VMAX and they're 17 grains and they are not cheap. And Hornady sent me a bunch of them, but the kids have run through those. And now it's like, it was a lot easier for to get companies to send folks like us ammo before the shortage happened. I figured out like, the cable, what do you want? Oh yeah, let me send you whatever. Now I feel bad even asking them. So when I see it on the shelf, I'm like, I'm going to buy that. So
yeah, 100%. I become a full out like ammo buyer because I will be asking them when I know.
I think I didn't buy ammo for like 5 years. And now it's like, if I see it on the shelf, it's going on with me.
Yeah.
I've become, I'm just like everyone else. If it's there, I got to have it.
Yeah. 100%, man.
Out of fear.
I was just at the
won't be able to
Black
find
Rifle Coffee mothership in Salt Lake this summer. I was there for like almost 2 weeks working, and literally every day I went to a new gun shop after work and like just drove around Salt Lake. I found 300 short mags that I've been looking for at a Shields. Like I'm doing it just like everybody else.
Yeah, got to.
If 17 HMR is awesome, it's an awesome hunting round. Like,
but anyway, that stuff's expensive.
It's expensive. Yeah. It's expensive. And like 22, there's more variety of ammo. So like you can get 22 ammo that is more expensive than 17 HMR made to match specs, but it's going to be on a whole like a more accurate ammunition than even the best 17. Just if you look at like SDs and velocities and even groups, the best 22 is the best 22 ammo is the best rimfire ammo. So you have that on the high end.
Okay.
And you have cheap ammunition, bucket of bullets, Remington stuff, which is back, I hear, which is awesome, that I can put in a rifle and put my 5-year-old on it, and he can knock little things down at 25 yards all day long. You know, like, I don't want to sound like I'm a snob and I'm only into the European expensive stuff. Like, there's a place for the whole spectrum of rimfire ammo. And what's nice about the 22 is that spectrum's much larger. It's not like the 17s are all basically like mid-price or expensive kind of hunting ammo. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to burn that up teaching a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old how to shoot, frankly.
Right.
Especially when I can get like a really accurate 22 rifle for, $500.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I encourage people to check out the book, Rimfire Revolution, a complete guide to modern 22 rifles. Fascinating stuff. And Michael, if folks want to follow along in your journey, actually, why don't you tell us what you're doing now with Black Rifle Coffee too, real quick?
Yeah, right on. So I work for Black Rifle Coffee, and they started an outdoor project called Free Range American. My background, like, prior to this job I've been at about a year now, a little over a year now, was I was an outdoor writer. So I freelanced for 10 plus years. Most of my work showed up in Field and Stream. I was an editor at large at Field and Stream. So Black Rifle Coffee decided that they wanted to spin up an outdoor kind of media brand. So we're very new. It's freerangeamerican.us. I think we're doing awesome stuff. We're out there, we're filming hunts. We have a great like crew of guys that we're building up. We're putting daily content up on the website every day. And so, yeah, that's been kind of my newest project, sort of post book. And it's been awesome because Black Rifle Coffee is a company that like fully supports hunting. Like, I think nearly all the owners and like most of not most, because there's a lot of employees now, but a bunch of the employees have gone missing because it's elk season. And like, there's something like 10 or 15 guys in the company who've like killed bulls this year.
Somebody sent me a message on Instagram the other day because because like I said, Black Rifle's a new sponsor of the show. And it was me, like, we were talking about how we're making them in the, what is this called? The Chemex, the coffee. Yeah. It's a brand new deal for me. It was like eye-opening, but he was like, Black Rifle donates money to anti-hunting, anti-gun groups. And I was like, you know what? I don't even have to research that because you're full of shit. whoever told you that, no, they don't.
Like, literally the name is Black Rifle Coffee and the logo is an SBR, and like dumbasses on Twitter are going to come at us and say we're like some secret like anti-Second Amendment group, like, right. They're paying my fucking mortgage and I just wrote a book about guns trying to get all of America into rifles. Like, get the fuck out of here. Yep. It's internet culture, and like, there's just fucking nonsense to it. A lot of guys in the company got behind Tulsi Gabbard. Joe Rogan got behind her, like, technically a Democrat, but like, it's just so fucking dumb. They're literally paying employees to go on guided elk hunts. Yeah. Literally, we have a shooting team, like, we have Jersey guys who are at shooting matches.
How do I get invited as a guest to go on one of these deals? Let me tell you.
Yeah, man, we got to we'll get you out there, get you to the ranch. You're actually, where are you in Texas?
North Texas, like in McKinney, just north of Dallas.
I don't know shit about Texas. How far is that from San Antonio? It's far, right?
It's not too far for me. I drive that way all the time.
Yeah. So we got to get you to the ranch, and it's outside of San Antonio. There's a shooting complex, and like, it's rad. We'll get you down there and hang out with the guys and shoot rifles. I think you can shoot out to like 1,200 yards there.
Well,
I've shot archery there to date.
yeah. Well, you'll have to give me a little instruction on that. I think the farthest I've ever rang steel out was like 900. So,
Yeah.
but that'd be fun.
Yeah, man. We can do it.
Your social media stuff, so folks can follow you.
Yes, sir. At Michael Arche. At Michael Arche. Yep. And
I'm sure they can
on Facebook, and the book is sold everywhere. Like so it's on Amazon. GunDigestStore.com was the least expensive place to get it for a while. It's gonna I'm told it's in Barnes and Nobles. I haven't seen photos of that yet. So like if you're listening and you see the book at Barnes and Noble, like send me a picture, please. I'm excited to see that, but I haven't found it yet.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, man. And
Awesome.
certainly enjoyed it.
Yeah, dude. It's always fun to catch up. I'm glad we did this.
Absolutely. We'll do it again soon, I'm sure.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Take it easy.